A decorated officer facing trial for the assault of a young black man suddenly brandished a firearm at the presiding judge mid-testimony. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence, and the judge's unwavering response reshaped everything. St. Charles, Missouri, a town once known for its tranquility, a descriptor that had long since lost its meaning. By 8:10 a.m., the corridor outside courtroom 4B buzzed with more than just media or curious onlookers. It was filled with locals. These were the people who had seen the viral video, recognized the faces, and whispered anxiously. "Can you believe she still pleads not guilty?" one murmured. "That judge won't stand for it. You saw the clip, right? She slammed him over a simple license plate light." Inside, a lone camera lens meticulously captured every detail, not for entertainment, but for a hearing that had captivated the entire state. The bailiff called for order, and then she appeared. Officer Karen Dufresne in a crisp navy suit, her badge still glinting despite regulations against wearing it in court. She carried herself with rigid posture, chin held high, eyes scanning. Her expression was unreadable, meticulously controlled, devoid of any hint of regret or humility. Her gaze bypassed the gallery, fixing instead on Judge Raynard Ellison, a 57-year-old man whose eyes remained steadfast as she entered. His dark gray suit, his wedding ring, his face bore the quiet weight of unstated history. He acknowledged her with a single slow nod before returning to the documents before him, his gaze unwavering, not cold but utterly unmoved. This wasn't just another proceeding. Everyone in the room felt it. A palpable tension, unseen yet suffocating, permeated the air, a dense mixture of anger, sorrow, and raw anticipation clinging to every surface. The core of the case. A traffic stop on August 7, Interstate 70. Tyree Jenkins, a black college student, was pulled over for a non-functioning taillight. Within 6 minutes he was face down on the scorching asphalt, a knee pressed into his back, blood on his lip. He repeatedly asked, "What did I do?" while she simply commanded, "Stop resisting." The bodycam footage filled in the gaps, or at least most of them. Tyree never fought, never raised his voice, never attempted to flee. He lay there, bleeding, as Dufresne calmly radioed for backup. The video exploded online, going viral within 36 hours. People watched it and came to a unified conclusion: no, not this time. Yet Dufresne maintained her plea of not guilty, asserting she followed protocol. She claimed the young man was aggressive, that he reached for something, though the footage showed no such action. She insisted her training kicked in. Her lawyers moved to suppress the video, citing emotional bias, but Judge Ellison rejected every attempt. And so here they were. "You may be seated," Judge Ellison instructed. The murmuring ceased. Chairs creaked, papers rustled. Prosecutor Delaney Ford, a woman in her early 50s with tightly pulled back hair and a quiet intensity in her voice, stood. "Your Honor, the people are ready to proceed." The defense followed. "The defense is ready, Your Honor." The opening statements weren't explosive. They didn't need to be. They were the kind that made people fidget, whisper, and clench their fists. "This case is not about race," Dufresne's attorney declared at one point. "It's about perception, situational response, and law enforcement's duty to act under threat." Judge Ellison briefly lifted his eyes. "Be careful," he stated, quiet but firm. "Let's not insult the intelligence of this room." A few heads turned, even Dufresne looked up. Ford spoke next. "You will hear from witnesses. You will see the footage again. You will hear from Mr. Jenkins himself. And at the end of it all, you will ask yourself not just what she did but why she did it." She paused. And who she saw when she looked at him. But the tension in that courtroom had yet to reach its apex. That would come when Dufresne herself took the stand. Before the viral footage, before the packed courtroom, before Tyree Jenkins even stepped out of his car that afternoon, Karen Dufresne's name commanded respect. Not universally, of course, but widely enough. She joined the St. Charles Police Department in 2006, starting on foot patrol, rising to traffic enforcement, then specialized units. Her file boasted numerous commendations. Quick reflexes during a bank robbery, CPR administered to a highway crash victim, a drug bust that made local news. She had a reputation for being strictly by the book, even when adherence was difficult. What didn't make the record, however, were the complaints, a quiet, often dismissed pattern. 3 excessive force claims in the last 5 years. 2 from young black men, 1 from a Latino teenager who alleged she called him trash before slamming him into a squad car. None of it ever stuck. Dashcams were inconclusive, supervisors wrote vague summaries, tactical intervention was deemed appropriate, no sustained violation, officer responded within departmental standards. But if you worked nearby, if you spent time in break rooms, coffee shops, or locker rooms, you'd hear things, Karen's got a short fuse. She doesn't like attitude. She's not scared to lay hands. She doesn't take no lip, especially not from those ones. Those ones, it was never said loudly enough to be actionable, but you felt it in the way it was delivered, the smirks, the knowing glances, the unspoken code. August 7th began like any other shift. She clocked in, inspected her squad car, and logged into her onboard computer. She handled 2 calls before noon, a stolen package report and a welfare check on a 911 hang-up. Then came the alert. Black male, late teens, out-of-state plates, taillight out. She maintained she wasn't profiling, that it was a random stop. But when the dispatcher later reviewed the dashcam audio, the first thing she said after reading the plate wasn't protocol. It was, of course. That part wasn't included in the bodycam footage the public saw, but it emerged later in discovery. At 2:47 p.m., her dashcam showed her cruiser pulling behind a silver Honda Accord on the shoulder of I-70, 2 lanes of traffic whizzing by. She approached the car, her right hand resting on her holster. Tyree Jenkins, 21, a business major at Lindenwood University, was heading home after visiting his mom in Florissant. A textbook lay on the passenger seat, a lemon Gatorade bottle nestled between his knees. He tapped the window. He rolled it down. "What's the problem, officer?" "License and registration." "It's right here." "Did I do something wrong?" "Your taillight's out." Really? I didn't know." "I can fix that." "Step out of the vehicle for me." Tyree hesitated. "Why?" "It's standard." She reached for the door. He pulled it closed. "I didn't do anything." What followed was rapid. She yanked the door open. "Wait, hold on," he said. She grabbed his wrist. "Please don't," he pleaded. She pulled him out, twisted his arm, forced him down and cuffed him roughly, all while repeating, "Stop resisting," even though he offered no resistance. Then she radioed in as if it were just another Tuesday. When the footage hit social media, it wasn't just students or activists reacting. Grandmothers, veterans, a local librarian, even her own former high school English teacher. People couldn't defend it. There was nothing to hide behind. But instead of resigning, Dufresne dug in, hired a defense team and released a statement. "I acted within my rights and within the law," she asserted. She claimed she feared for her safety, that she thought he might have had a weapon. There was no weapon, only that Gatorade bottle, now with a crack in its plastic from where it rolled across the pavement. Tyree was left with bruised ribs, a sprained wrist and something far worse, shame. He stopped attending classes for a while, saying he didn't know how to walk through campus without people looking at him as if he were part of a tragedy. He said it made him feel small even though he did nothing wrong. He agreed to testify, reasoning that if he didn't, what was the point of all this? But when he entered the courtroom, he didn't know that the woman who hurt him would bring something more dangerous than mere excuses. The witness stand appeared unremarkable. Polished wood, a microphone that wobbled slightly when bumped. But when Tyree Jenkins sat there, the entire room shifted. He wore a white button-down, no tie. His hands rested in his lap, fingers clenched as if he was trying to suppress fidgeting. His eyes, however, told the true story. Judge Ellison offered a nod, the kind that conveyed, "Take your time. You're not alone here." Delaney Ford, the prosecutor, approached with deliberate care. No dramatics, no tricks, just a folder in her hands and a voice steady enough to carry across the room without echo. "Mr. Jenkins," she began, "can you tell the court what happened on August 7th in your own words?" Tyree swallowed. "I was driving back from my mom's house, just got on the highway. I wasn't speeding, I wasn't swerving. I didn't think anything was wrong until I saw the lights behind me." He paused, glancing briefly towards Dufresne. "She said my taillight was out. I didn't know. I tried to cooperate. I gave her my license. I asked why she needed me to get out. She didn't answer, just told me it was standard. But I didn't feel safe, so I asked again." "And what happened next?" "She opened the door, grabbed me." I tried to hold on to the steering wheel. I wasn't fighting, I was scared. He pulled me out, slammed me on the ground, cuffed me. My face hit the road. Ford nodded gently. Did you ever threaten her? No. Did you ever reach for a weapon? I didn't have one. I had a Gatorade. That's it. Ford walked to the evidence table, pressed a button. The screen behind the judge lit up. A still frame from the body cam footage appeared. Tyree flat on the pavement, blood under his nose, hands behind his back, Dufresne's knee pinning him down. The courtroom fell silent. Was that how you spent the rest of the stop? Yeah, until backup came. And how long were you on the ground? 3, maybe 4 minutes. Felt longer. Ford turned off the screen. Thank you. Then the defense stepped forward. A tall man named Roland Hensley, expensive suit, a smug tone. Mr. Jenkins, do you recall how you reacted when Officer Dufresne asked you to step out of the vehicle? I asked why. You refused, correct? I was confused. I didn't understand it. But you didn't comply, that's fair to say? I was scared. So you resisted? No, I didn't fight. I didn't. You resisted her command, did you not? Judge Ellison raised a hand. Counselor, be precise. Ask, don't corner. Hensley shifted. Mr. Jenkins, do you think it's possible Officer Dufresne perceived your actions as threatening? No. I didn't yell. I didn't move fast. I kept asking questions, that's all. Hensley tried another angle. Are you aware of how often officers face sudden violence during traffic stops? I've read about it. But I'm not a threat just because I'm stopped. You were nervous, were you not? Of course I was nervous. And sometimes nervousness can look like... Tyree leaned forward, his voice firmer. I was scared, not dangerous. There's a difference. You could feel the air tighten again. Tyree's mom sat in the back row, tears in her eyes, clutching her purse as if it could shield her from the moment. The defense concluded their questions and Tyree stepped down. But what resonated with people wasn't just his testimony. It was the sheer weight he carried, walking back to his seat as if he'd been holding something no one should ever have to bear alone. Later, a paramedic who examined Tyree after the arrest testified. She said he kept repeating one thing over and over even as she checked his ribs. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. That silence returned. But the courtroom wouldn't know, just how tightly Officer Dufresne's world was about to fracture until she took that very same seat. When Karen Dufresne took the stand, it wasn't her voice people noticed first. It was the barely visible tremor in her fingers as she adjusted the microphone. She still maintained that stiff, unreadable expression, like someone desperately trying to prevent glass from shattering by holding it tighter. Her lawyer stood nearby. Officer Dufresne, how long have you served in law enforcement? 19 years. And in that time, have you ever discharged your weapon during a traffic stop? No. Have you ever been injured in the line of duty? Yes. Twice. Tell us about the second time. She straightened slightly. 4 years ago. Domestic call in a trailer park. Man with a knife. I was the first on scene. He came at me. I didn't draw, just disarmed him, but I tore something in my shoulder. A few jurors nodded, a flicker of sympathy. The story carried weight. But sympathy is fragile, and the next line brought the mood sharply back to center. Let's talk about August 7th. Her jaw shifted, a subtle blink. I was driving eastbound on I-70. Ran a plate for a minor equipment issue, tail light. Standard check. Came back clean. But I saw the driver hesitate when I pulled behind him. That got my attention. Did you feel threatened? Not at first. But his behavior escalated. How? He asked a lot of questions. Stalled. Wouldn't step out of the car. Ford stood. Objection. Requesting clarification. Isn't escalation subjective? Judge Ellison waved his hand. Sustained. Move on. Hensley continued. What made you initiate physical contact? He refused to exit. I opened the door, he pulled it back. That's resistance. Ford stood again. Physical resistance? Dufresne's pause was just long enough. No. But it was defiance. Judge Ellison leaned forward. Ms. Dufresne, words matter in this courtroom. We are not on the street anymore. She didn't respond. The footage played again, this time with the audio slowed, clear. Her voice saying, stop resisting, even as Tyree lay still, coughing, her hand pressing the back of his head, his Gatorade bottle rolling onto the highway shoulder. Hensley shifted in front of the jury. Officer Dufresne, in your professional opinion, did you act within proper protocol? I believed I did. Ford stood. Belief and reality are different things. You believed he was a threat, he wasn't. You believed he resisted, the footage says he didn't. At what point do your beliefs stop justifying violence? Objection. Overruled. Ford stepped closer. Did you ever ask yourself what you saw when you looked at Tyree? Dufresne's throat tightened. I saw someone stalling. Did you see a young man? The student? Someone scared. Silence. Ford turned to the jury. Or did you see someone you already made your mind up about before you touched his car door? The room held still. Dufresne exhaled slowly. I did what I was trained to do. Then your training is broken. Objection. Sustained. But the line hung in the air. Then came a pause in questioning, a break in rhythm, the kind that usually allows a witness to compose themselves. Dufresne didn't compose herself. She fidgeted with her sleeve, her eyes shifting slightly toward the gallery. Her gaze briefly landed on a woman in the second row, her former partner, now retired. This was the same woman who had submitted a quiet statement weeks ago, never made public but read by the judge. It stated that Dufresne hadn't always been this way. Something had changed after a 2019 shooting review. She started seeing enemies instead of people. Dufresne's jaw clenched. Then unexpectedly she spoke again, unprompted. You all want to crucify me, but you weren't there. Judge Ellison held up a hand. Ms. Dufresne, answer only what's asked. She looked directly at him now, unfiltered. I've pulled over more kids like him than I can count. Always nervous, always reaching for something. I don't have time to guess if it's a gun or a snack. The gallery stirred. Judge Ellison leaned forward, his voice low but firm. You do have time. You're sworn to. She opened her mouth, but her breathing quickened, her eyes twitched. Her left hand dropped to her lap and didn't reappear. No one, not even her own attorney, anticipated what she was reaching for. There's a moment in every courtroom where time stutters, not stops, but hesitates, as if the world is deciding which way to tip. That moment arrived the second Karen Dufresne's hand rose from her lap, clutching a black Sig Sauer pistol. She didn't shout, didn't stand, didn't even blink. She simply pointed the gun, steadily, without trembling, at Judge Reynard Ellison. The room froze. One bailiff reached for his sidearm but held back. Too many people, too close, too fast. Another instinctively stepped in front of the nearest juror. A woman in the gallery screamed. Judge Ellison didn't move. He didn't duck, didn't flinch. He looked at her, simply looked, and said, You don't want to do that. Her breathing was uneven now, lips trembling, but her hand didn't waver. You think you know me, she said, her voice tight. You don't know what it's like out there. You sit up here in your robe and judge me. I had seconds to make a call. I'm not judging your job, Ellison replied calmly. I'm judging your choices. This one included. Her eyes flashed. You all came in here with your minds made up. The video, the kid crying on the stand. None of you care what it's like being the one who has to make the decision when a hand moves the wrong way. Your job was never about reacting, Ellison said. It was about protecting. Even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. You ever been scared in your car at night with no backup coming? She hissed. I've been scared sitting on my own front porch, wondering if I'll live to see morning. That hit her, you could see it. Something cracked behind her eyes. Put the gun down, he said. No, she whispered. You want to be heard? I hear you. But this makes you a criminal. It undoes every badge you ever wore. Tears slipped down her cheeks now. She wasn't sobbing, just leaking, as if something was breaking from inside and couldn't be stopped anymore. I gave 20 years to this department, she said. And now I'm the villain. No, Ellison said. You were the villain the moment you stopped seeing people. That was your choice. Not the badges. Yours. Silence. Not a cough, not a whisper. Just her fingers still resting on the trigger, her eyes darting between judge, jury, crowd, camera, everyone watching. Karen, came a voice from behind her. It was her former partner, the woman from the gallery. You're not fixing anything with that. You're just proving the kid right. Karen's hand shook for the first time. Put it down, the woman repeated. Don't let that be your last moment. Then Ellison spoke again, quieter this time. This isn't about how it ends. It's about who you let yourself become. A long breath escaped her lips. And then finally her arm dropped slowly. The gun hovered near her lap. Bailiffs moved but slowly. One took the weapon. Another took her wrist. No yelling, no slamming, just quiet, practiced steps, skilled hands, and a woman who no longer resisted anything. She didn't speak as they cuffed her. She didn't struggle. She just stared at Ellison one last time. He returned the gaze, not with anger, not with pride, just a sorrow so still it settled over the room like dust. But in the silence that followed, the courtroom wasn't thinking about the gun anymore. They were thinking about the mirror she had just held up to the entire system. 15 seconds. That's how long the gun was pointed. 15 seconds that unraveled everything people thought they understood about control, authority, and fear. As the bailiffs escorted Karen Dufresne out of the courtroom, no one cheered, no one clapped. They just watched, still frozen, still silent, not because justice had been served but because justice had just been threatened live in front of them all. Judge Ellison sat motionless for a few moments, his hands resting on the bench, his breathing slow and even. Then, without looking at anyone, he reached for the gavel. Not to adjourn but to ground himself. He then looked up at those present. "There will be a recess," he said, his voice hoarse. 15 minutes. No one leaves. Bailiffs, secure the exits. I'll return shortly. He stood and walked out the side door. But those 15 minutes weren't quiet. People whispered now, nervously, rapidly, as if they couldn't contain the shock within their skin. Tyree Jenkins sat with his hands over his mouth. His mother clutched his knee as if it were the only thing tethering her to the moment. Across the aisle, reporters scribbled in notepads with shaking hands. The stenographer wiped tears from her keyboard. Ford, the prosecutor, stepped outside with her assistant and paced the hallway in slow, measured circles. Dufresne's attorney sat alone, hands clasped, staring at the floor, his entire posture declaring, "I never saw it coming." But behind the courtroom wall, in a small chamber, Judge Ellison sat on a wooden bench, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. He wasn't crying, but he was breathing hard. The kind of breathing that comes when something ancient inside you gets shaken loose, something old and buried and full of scar tissue. His clerk knocked lightly and stepped in. "Judge? You all right?" Ellison looked up slowly. His eyes were wet but focused. "I'm fine." "You sure?" "No," he admitted. "But I'll be back." He stood, buttoned his jacket and walked back into the room. Everyone stood when he returned, though some did so slowly as if their knees weren't quite ready yet. He sat down, adjusted his glasses and leaned slightly toward the mic. "Today has been." He stopped, reconsidered. "What just happened is not only a breach of this court's security, it's a window into something deeper." His voice was steady now. "We just watched someone trained to serve and protect hold a firearm on the bench because she felt cornered. Because she believed, in that moment, that her fear was bigger than the law." He looked around the room, locking eyes with jurors, with Tyree, with Dufresne's lawyer. "That is exactly the fear people like Mr. Jenkins live with every day. The difference is they don't get to carry a badge or a gun while feeling it." Silence. He continued, slower now. "Let today be a moment of reckoning. Not just for this case but for the culture that allows fear to justify harm. That trains officers to react faster than they listen. That teaches courts to dismiss lives before they hear them." Then he paused, letting it breathe. "I will not declare a mistrial. I will not silence the testimony we've already heard. The jury will return tomorrow and this court will resume." He stood. Because justice doesn't flinch. Even when it's stared down by a loaded weapon. With that he turned and walked out. And still no one clapped. No one moved quickly. They just sat there, letting the weight of what had happened settle into the corners of their minds. 15 seconds. Not long enough to blink twice but long enough to see everything that had been broken for years. But outside the courthouse the story wasn't over. It was only now reaching the rest of the world. By the next morning, the footage had already made national news. Not the body cam, not the traffic stop, but the grainy, angled video from a reporter's phone showing Officer Karen Dufresne calmly raising a pistol toward Judge Raynard Ellison while a jury sat stunned just feet away. It played on every screen in every airport bar and living room from Fresno to Pittsburgh. Headlines were blunt. "Officer snaps in court, points gun at black judge." trial chaos in Missouri, cop turns accuser, justice under fire, literally. But the footage didn't tell the whole story, not the way it was lived. That part came through in the faces of the people who had been in the room. Their words, their silence. Tyree Jenkins refused interviews. His lawyer said he needed time. He didn't go back to campus that week or the week after. He stayed at his mother's, mostly on the couch, phone off, TV unplugged. He said he couldn't make sense of how someone could hurt you, lie about it, and then aim a gun at the judge for speaking the truth aloud. But eventually he wrote something down, for sentences he handed to his lawyer, who read it quietly at a press briefing. I didn't want to be part of something big. I just wanted to be seen for who I am. That courtroom showed me how broken things are, but it also showed me there are people still fighting to fix them. Judge Ellison received threats after that day. His staff filtered them, some handwritten, some online, none serious enough to warrant security changes, but enough to remind him that the robe he wore didn't shield him from the world outside. So he returned to the bench every day that week. On Friday he walked into a high school gymnasium on his lunch break and gave a talk, already scheduled long before the trial. The topic was supposed to be civic responsibility. He didn't use notes. I stood still while someone pointed a gun at me, he said to a group of juniors and seniors, because I knew what would happen if I didn't. He looked around. But what shook me most wasn't the gun. It was the look in her eyes, that look of being certain she had no other option. And the scary part is she believed that. He let that sit. So if you want to be responsible citizens, don't start by quoting laws. Start by unlearning what makes you assume the worst in someone who doesn't look like you. Back in the courtroom, the trial continued briefly. After Dufresne was arrested, the case unraveled. Her lawyers filed for mental health evaluations. The defense collapsed. Prosecutors dropped the trial and filed new charges: aggravated assault, weapons violations, obstruction of justice. She was denied bail, held in a facility 2 counties over. But the conversation she forced open didn't stop there. At City Hall meetings, people showed up not just with protest signs but with real questions. How many use-of-force complaints had been quietly buried? Why wasn't there mandatory psychological screening every 5 years for officers? How did someone like Dufresne serve 19 years without mandatory de-escalation retraining? Change came slowly, but it came. The police chief resigned 2 months later. The city council approved a budget for body cams that couldn't be shut off manually. A civilian oversight committee, once a subject of ridicule, was suddenly a real entity with real power. And Tyree? He went back to school eventually, quietly, no press, no attention. He changed his major, switching from business to social work. He said it felt like the right thing to do now. Justice doesn't always look like a verdict. Sometimes it looks like a gun being lowered. A judge who refuses to duck. A kid who doesn't stop speaking. A crowd that doesn't let the moment die after the cameras leave. Because justice isn't one thing. It's a choice made over and over. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. If you found meaning in this story, share it. Talk about it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter.